They say God warned Noah about the flood. But nobody warned her about the silence. Before the rain ever touched the earth, something else cracked. Not the sky. Not the ground. But a heart. They remember the flood. The destruction. The judgment. But before the animals marched, before the heavens split, before history was rewritten by water, there was her. Not a prophet. Not a wife. Just a woman who once pulled Noah from the mouth of death and gave him her last piece of bread. He never forgot that moment. But somehow, when it mattered most, he left her behind. And no one ever tells her side of the story. She had no name in the scrolls, but the birds knew her. The wind bent gently when it passed her hut. She spoke kindly to beggars and bitterly to no one. Her fingers smelled of crushed olives. Her eyes of still water. She had the kind of silence people trusted. And for years she gave it to Noah. When the world called him mad, when famine hollowed his chest, when grief nearly erased his fire, she gave him her silence. And in return, he gave her hope. Or at least, she thought that's what he was building. The first time she noticed the change, it was in his hands. They used to tremble when he prayed. Now they shook when he stopped. He came home with calloused knuckles and sawdust in his hair. She asked what he was building. He smiled, but not at her. Through her. Past her. Like he saw something no one else did. That night she watched him from the doorway, hammering into the night, whispering to the stars. The moon said nothing. But her heart heard everything. Those days the skies were heavy but dry. The elders said the clouds were pregnant with something ancient. The crops leaned in strange directions. Animals began disappearing, 2 at a time. She thought it was hunger. But Noah? He said it was God. Said the voice told him to prepare. To separate. To rise. She watched him stack wood higher than their roof, carving angles she didn't understand. And with every plank he nailed, a distance grew between them that no ladder could reach. She didn't know he was building an ark. She only knew he was no longer building with her. One morning, she found a feather on his pillow. It wasn't from any bird she'd ever seen. Long, silver-veined. Soft like rain that hadn't fallen yet. He had already left by then, early, before the sun could see his guilt. She touched the feather to her lips. It didn't taste like home. It tasted like goodbye. Noah returned late, always smelling of animals and eternity. She tried to wait up. She tried to pretend the silence didn't ache. But some silences are too loud. And some absences are sermons. One night she followed him. Barefoot. Through the field of whispering wheat and groaning earth. Until she saw it. The ark. Half-built but already massive, like a wooden grave for a world not yet dead. She stood there in the shadows, heart quivering. He never turned around. But she knew. He knew she was watching. The next day, she lit the lamp before he came home. She set the table with their first meal, the one she made when he had nothing. Boiled figs. Fermented milk. 2 clay bowls. He sat. Ate. But the weight in his eyes never touched the food. She reached for his hand. It twitched but did not move. She wanted to ask. She wanted to scream. But what do you say to a man chosen by God, who didn't choose you? The town mocked him, but she never did. Not even when they laughed at her for loving him. She kept his secrets, like sacred scrolls. But even sacred things can shatter. One night, the sky growled louder than ever. No stars. Just clouds layered like bruises. He stood at the edge of the field, whispering again. She approached him slowly, trembling like a leaf about to fall. The ground felt strange beneath her feet, like it knew something she didn't. She stood beside him. He didn't look. Didn't speak. Didn't offer a single word. Not even goodbye. And then... it rained. Not like a drizzle. Not like a blessing. But like the sky was mourning something no one else could see. Water poured like judgment, like prophecy cracking open. People screamed. Animals howled. But she stood still. Barefoot in the mud. Soaked in confusion. Eyes locked on the ark, its massive door creaking closed like a tomb sealing the future. She searched the edge of the ramp. And there he was. Noah. His face pale. His eyes wet, not from the rain, but from something far deeper. He saw her. But he didn't stop. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He didn't jump down and pull her aboard. He just looked. And in that look was every goodbye ever spoken. The rain lashed her cheeks like whips. Still, she didn't cry. She only mouthed 2 words. I forgive you. And then the door slammed shut. The ark lifted. Like a coffin carried by angels. It floated above graves that hadn't yet formed. Above homes, lovers, children, questions. It floated above her. She stood knee-deep in water, arms limp at her sides, watching the man she once saved disappear into obedience. They say he followed God. But she was the one who stayed behind and faced the flood without a boat, without a voice, without a name. Sometimes, holiness feels like abandonment. In the hours that followed, the world became water. Mountains shrank. Villages vanished. The sky refused to stop. People climbed trees, clung to rooftops, prayed to deities who didn't answer. She didn't pray. She walked. Through currents that pulled. Through screams that faded. Through floating memories and shattered futures. She walked until her legs failed. Then she knelt. Then she floated. But she never cursed him. Somewhere, high above her, the ark swayed. Wood groaning against the weight of obedience. Inside, Noah couldn't sleep. Not because of the storm. But because of her eyes, still haunting the inside of his eyelids. Still forgiving. Still breaking him apart with mercy. The ark groaned like a wounded animal. Not from the waves. Not from the weight of elephants or lions. But from something deeper, something only Noah could hear. It was the sound of obedience, colliding with memory. Each plank he'd nailed with purpose now echoed with regret. Each creak whispered her name. And though the world outside screamed with water, the loudest storm raged within him. He had followed God. He had built the boat. But why did it feel like he was drowning inside it? The animals slept. The storm did not. Water slammed against the wooden walls like fists trying to break through time. His sons worked. His wife watched. But Noah wandered. Wandered through dark corridors filled with straw and shadows. Every room smelled like fur and fear. He closed his eyes, but saw her face instead. Not as she looked at him last, but how she looked the first time. Under the fig tree. Handing him bread with fingers that trembled but never dropped. She gave even when she had nothing. And now she had nothing again, except his absence. The rain had rhythm. Like a ticking clock without numbers. It mocked him with every drop. Drip. 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 Each second was a memory he couldn't undo. He remembered how she used to say nothing when he failed. How her silence wasn't punishment, but prayer. How she saw things in him even God hadn't spoken of yet. How she stood by him when his hands bled and his name was mud. And how, when he was chosen, he never told her. He let her find out through absence. He let her drown in silence. In the far corner of the ark was a single birdcage. A dove. White as forgotten promises. It fluttered whenever he approached. Not with fear. With longing. As if it too remembered something worth flying toward. He often stood there, watching it sleep, wondering if it dreamt of sky, or land. Wondering if it would forgive him, the way she did. But forgiveness is heavy. And this boat had no room for ghosts. One night, the ark tilted violently. Thunder cracked so loud, it split a barrel in half. His sons ran. The animals wailed. Noah knelt, hands gripping the floor like a child gripping his father's robe. And then, he whispered her name. Not loud. Not as a prayer. But like a wound speaking its own language. It wasn't enough to calm the sea. But for a moment, it calmed him. There was no time aboard the ark. Only hunger and shadows and the long silence of survival. Noah grew thinner. Not from fasting. From guilt. His eyes sank. His lips cracked from salt and self-denial. He fed the animals, but could no longer feed the part of him that once believed obedience would be painless. Faith had cost him something precious. And even as the ark remained afloat, he wondered what had sunk in him. The dreams came after 40 days. At first, just glimpses. Her back turned. Her hand reaching for a fig branch. The sound of her feet running. Not from fear, but from rain. Then the dreams grew louder. She was no longer alone. She was singing. Not to him, but to someone else. He woke in a sweat. Clutched the wooden beam beside his cot. And for the first time, he feared that God had preserved her, but not for him. The animals stopped pacing. The floodwaters began to settle. Light pierced cracks in the ceiling like fingers reaching into a coffin. Noah stood by the window. Opened it. Let the air hit his face like a memory returning too late. The world had changed. But inside him, nothing had dried. Still, he waited. Waited for the sign. Waited for the voice. Waited for forgiveness. He sent the raven first. It didn't return. He wondered if it had drowned, or simply found something better than the ark. Then he sent the dove. It flew out with grace. And returned with nothing. No olive. No leaf. Just empty wings. He held it gently in his hands, forehead resting against its feathers. The bird didn't struggle. It just breathed. So did he. But neither of them seemed alive. He tried not to speak her name again. But the silence was unkind. So he carved it onto the inside of his chamber door. 7 letters. Etched so deeply it bled through the wood. He didn't finish the last letter. He couldn't. Because finishing it felt like a goodbye. And he hadn't earned one. The rain stopped. But nothing was over. The ark settled atop a mountain, a peak no one had named yet. The world outside was still muddy. Still broken. But it was still. He opened the door. The first time in months. And he didn't breathe in relief. He breathed in guilt. They stepped out in silence. Pairs. Families. Creatures of instinct. Even his sons looked around like strangers. But Noah looked down. Not at the ground. At the absence. At the empty space beside him that she used to fill. She wasn't there. Not behind him. Not among the birds. Not in the crowd. Just wind. Just memory. Just her echo pressed into the dirt. He walked for days. Not as a prophet. Not as a survivor. Just as a man. Who realized that being chosen by God doesn't protect you from the ache of what you left behind. He walked into valleys and out of shadows. He followed the birds, not the signs. He followed guilt, not glory. And then he saw it. Something green. Alive. Blooming where no bloom should be. The green glowed in the distance like a secret not meant to be found. Surrounded by ash-colored hills and lifeless plains, the garden pulsed with unnatural beauty. Vines curled like language. Petals whispered. The soil breathed. Noah stood frozen at the edge of it, his feet crusted in dried mud, his heart beating like a child's first gasp. Nothing on the maps had spoken of this. None of the visions. None of the signs. This wasn't part of the plan. And yet here it was. Life, where only loss should have been. He stepped inside. Not with confidence. With reverence. The air changed, sweeter, thicker, sacred. The trees bowed slightly, or maybe the wind did it for them. The grass held his footsteps like memory holds grief, softly, but deeply. Birds chirped songs that didn't exist in the old world. Butterflies hovered, unafraid. And somewhere beneath it all, the ground hummed. As if it remembered what the flood had forgotten. Noah walked slowly. Every leaf seemed to look at him. Every branch bent as if it recognized the ache in his spine. There was no altar, no monument, no instructions. Just life. Wild. Beautiful. Unafraid of being unchosen. He touched a fig leaf and felt warmth pulse through his palm, like a forgotten heartbeat awakening. And then he heard it. Not thunder. Not God's voice. A song. Soft. Human. Familiar. She was not dead. She was not broken. She was not hiding. She was blooming. She knelt beside a stream, hands cupped in prayer, or maybe in peace. The sun wrapped around her like silk. Her hair was longer, her shoulders stronger. But it was her. The woman he left behind. Not behind anymore. He didn't call out. Didn't run. Didn't fall. He simply watched, awed, ashamed, undone. Because in that moment, he realized something sacred. God had not forgotten her. God had hidden her. Not out of punishment, but out of preservation. She rose. Not startled. As if she had sensed him long before he arrived. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Because her silence was no longer pain. It was power. And somehow, in the garden, it was he who felt like the uninvited one. He stepped forward. The distance closed but didn't vanish. She turned slowly. Their eyes met, not across water, not across time, but across understanding. And in her gaze he didn't see blame. He saw something far worse. Peace. Because she had made peace with what broke her. She had found God, not in the boat, but in the flood. He opened his mouth to speak. But the garden refused words. It fed on presence, not apology. So he wept. Quietly. Desperately. Not because she was alive, but because she didn't need him to be. The stream beside her sparkled like it knew something the oceans never did. She dipped her fingers in it. Held them to the sky. A bird landed near her shoulder. She smiled, not at Noah, but at the bird. It had a silver-veined feather. The same kind he once found on his pillow. The same kind she had left behind, long before the rain ever came. He dropped to his knees. Not to beg, but to understand. Because what he saw before him wasn't just survival. It was resurrection. It was restoration that didn't need a vessel. Didn't need wood or pitch or title. She had become what the ark could never hold. A living testament to the idea that sometimes God doesn't save you by lifting you out. He saves you by rooting you in. Noah closed his eyes. He breathed. Not like a man trying to fix the past, but like one finally letting it be what it was. He had followed the voice. He had obeyed. But now he understood. Obedience is not ownership. And not everything sacred needs to be carried. He rose slowly. The garden let him go. He turned his back to her, one last time. But this time, not from abandonment. From reverence. Some reunions aren't meant for hands. Only for the heart. As he walked back through the green, the vines untangled behind him. The birds returned to their trees. The wind whispered its final lesson. You were never the only thing God was saving. And when he returned to the ark, he said nothing. He simply carved something new beside her name. Not a letter. Not a date. A leaf.